Are you struggling to pass the CPA exam? Did your review course fail to fit your learning style? I'm Darius Clark of i-75 CPA Review, the #1 course supplement, where the right teacher makes all the difference. All right, let's take a look at the 1040, because the CPA reg exam is going to make sure you know your way around an individual tax return. So, of course, the names and the social security numbers are all fictitious for Phil and Shelley Strickland, married filing jointly with their 4 kids. Now, you're not going to have to memorize line numbers, but you will have to know that wages is on page 1 of the 1040 and where wages comes from. You see line 1, $80,000? It says attach form W-2. The exam could give you a document review sim where one of the exhibits is a W-2 form, and here would be a picture of that W-2, and you would have to know what flows over from this W-2 to the 1040 and what doesn't. And the exam would expect you to know that not only the $80,000 of wages would go to the 1040, but what about some of these other buckets, like federal income tax withheld, or social security tax withheld, or Medicare, state income tax, local income tax? Where do all these belong on a 1040? Maybe some of them don't transfer at all because they're not relevant to the 1040. So we might as well start with this W-2 form, and you can see that the gross wages on line 1, $80,000, comes right over to the 1040 page 1. And there's that $80,000 right there next to wages, salaries, tips, attached form W-2. Form W-2 comes from the employer, and Phil and Shelley Strickland, Phil Strickland has a W-2 from his employer, and that's his W-2 right here. And we'll see that Shelley Strickland does not have a W-2 because she's self-employed, and in an exhibit on a document sim, they'll tell you all about her business, and you need to know that that information goes on Schedule C of the 1040. Shelley Strickland's the owner of a business, so she has to fill out Schedule C, and her gross income on Schedule C goes way up at the top on line 1. See the $140,000? Well, that's what she took in, but she's not going to be taxed on that. Instead, she gets to deduct all these business expenses first, and then we determine if she made a profit, in this case $72,720, or if there's a loss on Schedule C, then you get to deduct that loss against the other family income. So no W-2 for Shelley Strickland. She's got a Schedule C as a small business owner. And the profit from this Schedule C business, where does that go on the 1040? Because remember we said the most important thing is to know how the 1040 flows. So this $72,720 has to get back to page 1 of the 1040 somehow. Does it directly come back to 1040, or does it stop somewhere else first? Well, see the $72,720? We're going to go now to Schedule 1 of the 1040, and you'll see where this figure shows up. So on their Form 1040, you can see Schedule 1, and line 3 happens to be Business Income attached Schedule C, and that's where some of these additional income items are combined. And you can see the total down at the bottom, $82,948. We're going to follow that figure back to page 1 of the 1040. Now we're back on 1040, page 1, and right there on line 8 where it says other income from Schedule 1, line 10, there's that $82,948. You don't see the specific profit on Schedule C here on page 1 because it's part of this other income from Schedule 1. But most of the income that Phil and Shelley Strickland earned this year comes from his W-2, $80,000, and her Schedule C business. And then you can see line 9 where it says your total income. So on page 1 of 1040, your total income is also known as your gross income. That's the $162,475. That's considered gross income, not adjusted gross income. In fact, you'll see that on line 11, adjusted gross income of $113,737. And the exam we'll ask you, how did the total gross income of $162,475 get down to $113,737? And for that, we're going to have to go back to Schedule 1 or Schedule 2, because the first page of the 1040 doesn't have all that information on it. Page 1 of the 1040 is not full of details. For that, you'd have to look at the individual schedules. Like we saw Schedule 1, we saw Schedule C. We saw that Schedule C flows back into Schedule 1 before it comes back to the 1040. Let's see that again. Let's go to Schedule C. Here's Shelley's business income, $72,720, and we said that doesn't appear on page 1 of the 1040. Instead, it has to make a stop on Schedule 1 first. And when it hits Schedule 1, it combines with some other items that also come back to Schedule 1 first before they go to the 1040, including rental real estate income, income from partnerships or S-corps, also gambling winnings. This would combine with that Schedule C profit, and that's where the $82,948 comes in, and then that figure goes back to 1040. And there's the $82,948 from Schedule 1 that appears on the 1040. So if you add the $82,948 to the $80,000 that Phil earned on his W-2 form, that's most of the family income right there. That's the total income, what we call gross income on line 9. And that's not the same as adjusted gross income, which is on line 11. And the difference between the two, that $48,738, the exam's going to ask you a lot about that, but notice that doesn't appear on page 1 of the 1040 either. That $48,738 is going to be on a different schedule. What schedule is going to explain the difference between gross income and adjusted gross income? And the answer is our old friend Schedule 1, but it's Schedule 1 Part 2. Here's where the items can be deducted from gross income to arrive at AGI, and that's where the total of $48,738 comes from, and then it goes back to page 1 of 1040. We'll go over these items in a different video. Some of the more obvious deductions that the exam will ask you about would be the IRA deduction, student loan interest deduction, self-employed health insurance deduction. This would be for Shelley Strickland because she's self-employed. So she gets to deduct her health insurance here for the whole family as a deduction to arrive at AGI. And all of these allowed deductions add up to $48,738. And this figure comes back to page 1 of 1040. And now we're back on page 1 of 1040. And you can see on line 10 where it says adjustments to income from Schedule 1, $48,738. And what is that figure? That explains the difference between gross income of $162,475 and adjusted gross income of $113,737. And this AGI figure, adjusted gross income, is a very important subtotal. A lot of the deductions that are allowed or not allowed from here on are based on this AGI figure of $113,737. So what the exam's likely to ask you, we said, was the flow of a 1040. So far, that flow starts with gross income of $162,475, and the next stop is adjusted gross income of $113,737. But notice adjusted gross income doesn't say taxable income. Taxable income doesn't appear until you get all the way down to the last line on 1040. There's the taxable income, $70,067. So when I say the exam is going to make you know the flow of a 1040, it means you're going to have an understanding of how gross income of $162,475 became taxable income of only $70,067. You won't have to memorize line numbers on any form, but you will have to know what forms flow back to 1040. And if you found this overview of a 1040 helpful, go to CPAexamtutoring.com and get yourself on I-75 with me, Darius Clark, where the right teacher makes all the difference.